think? Ready to get started? Yes. Super. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to just introduce myself and tell you why I'm here. And then I'm going to introduce us, or have the panelists introduce you to them. All right? My name is Regina Wallace-Jones. I am the Vice President of Product Operations at MINDBODY. And one of the many things that I have to do in my role is make sure that we are very crystal clear on what we're building, when we're building it, and also that we are clearly articulating that to our stakeholders, including our customers, our clients, our partners, and all of our internal stakeholders who are all conveying messages on our behalf. As well, I am the Vice Mayor of the city of East Palo Alto. And that city is right in the middle of, I call it the gateway to Silicon Valley. It literally sits in the middle of a triangle between Stanford University, which is my alma mater, Facebook, which is a company that I previously worked for, and Google. We're literally right in the middle. And there's no way for you to really enter into Silicon Valley without coming through East Palo Alto in some way. And yet, it is a city that is probably as far away from the tech economy as a city can possibly be. One of the things that's interesting demographically about my city is we are 65% Hispanic, roughly, 12% African American, 5% Polynesian, and the remainder is a small mixture of both Asian residents and white residents. So we are probably flipped demographically relative to the average city in the United States, and we deal with some really specific and special issues because of that. So I'm interested in this panel not only because I consider myself to be part of the communities that we're really trying to address when we talk about diversity and inclusion, but also because I really believe that when we take the time to listen to these voices, that we're going to be better at building our products and better at serving the broader population that makes up the global ecosystem that we live in. With that, I will say that I use he, she pronouns, she, her pronouns, but I really answer to whatever you're going to call me as long as you try to be respectful. And I'm going to ask each one of the panelists to introduce yourselves. I want you to tell us what your name is. I want you to share with us at some point what your pronouns are. I want you to talk about what this conversation means to you. And then I want you to just share briefly, for those of you who are business owners, what are some of the contexts that you use to sort of run your business? What are some of the beliefs that you subscribe to? What are some of the things that you have to do to enable that within 5 minutes or less? And if you're not a business owner, but a MINDBODyian or someone who is hoping to be better served by all of the customers that we have, tell us what your interest is in this conversation as well. Let's start here. Yeah?
Thank you. My name is Sam Rypinsky. Lake Sharp and I are the co-founders of Everybody Gym in Los Angeles, which is a radically inclusive gym and wellness center that really has at its center the mission of being inclusive across socioeconomic barriers, across race, gender, ability, age, size. We're really trying to depart from traditional fitness culture and really imagine what fitness and health and wellness can look like. And we're really proud of what we're doing. We're actually MINDBODY clients as well, which is how we got connected. And we're just excited to be here. I started the gym not having a gym background in part because I'm transgendered, and my experiences in health and fitness communities were really powerful teachers to me about how fitness and wellness is exclusive on many levels to many communities, not just the transgender community. But that was my lens point to understanding how fitness and wellness culture doesn't serve everyone and often comes from a vantage point of shaming and alienating people. So our perspective is the opposite. Our only assumption is that you're there to feel better. We don't push weight loss. We don't push one-size-fits-all culture when it comes to fitness or wellness. We're really interested in a holistic model, and we're happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
So my name is Tammy Cravit. I work for MINDBODY. I've been with MINDBODY for about 6.5 years, and I am a woman of transgender experience. I am also an autistic woman, and I have ADHD. And the reason why this conversation is important to me is because I've grown up for most of my life being told by our culture all of the reasons why I don't matter and why my life and my experiences don't matter and why I'm not enough. And when I was younger, before I transitioned, I was always told, you know, you're not masculine enough, you're not strong enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not smart enough, you're not hardworking enough. And then after I transitioned, the message shifted a little, and it's now, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not smart enough, you're not enough to matter. And I have had a struggle my whole life with not feeling like I was connected with my body, and so not feeling like I was connected with my wellness journey. I knew a lot of people early in my transition who committed suicide and a couple who were murdered, and I sometimes joke that if I had known that I was going to be the ones that made it, one of the ones that made it into my 40s, I would have taken better care of my body, because now I'm paying the price for some of that. But I think that what's really important to me is it's really hard for me to engage in a wellness journey where I don't see myself in the businesses that I visit and the people that I work with and meet and the images that I see in the media. And Marian Wright Edelman, who was an advocate for children, said, you can't be what you can't see. And so for me, being able to be visible for myself and who I am, and to increase the visibility of everybody else in the myriad communities that we belong to, is really important, because if the wellness revolution isn't for everybody, then it's not a revolution, and I don't want any part of that. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them.
Thank you, Tam. Hi guys, I'm Heather White. I'm the founder and CEO of trill.fit. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And this conversation is so important to me because for a long time, you know, especially within boutique fitness overall, I always felt like I was the only one. I was the only woman of color in the classes, and you know, there were a lot of different reasons why I was getting pulled out of my experience. And I got to ask myself, why are the only messaging, you know, especially for Black women in wellness, why am I only seeing Planet Fitness? And why am I only seeing like deep discount, like weight loss, journey messaging? Why isn't this about feeling better and truly like finding a place where you belong? And that's how we created the trill.fit brand. I think more and more, like as we look around, you know, we need to start taking care of ourselves, and we need to take care of the people around us. And I think that talking about, you know, not just diversity inclusion, but equity, diversity inclusion is a really important conversation for, especially now, today, literally right now. I think we have to do it. We're also a MINDBODY client, and we're so excited to be here and to help facilitate this conversation. And for everyone in the group, just thank you for being here, because I'm really, really excited for us to have this conversation together.
Yes, my name is Lake Sharp. I'm the co-founder of Everybody with Sam. And before I met Sam, I had worked in the fitness industry as a teacher and had got quite entrenched into a pretty elite gym space, and found I had to spend a lot of time and energy policing my clients on basic stuff, on not being sexist, on not being homophobic, on not making inappropriate comments, and it was this pervasive culture in an elite environment. And I left that environment and thought I was done with the fitness industry, and then met Sam and realized that there was another path forward. So on a fundamental level, fitness and wellness is inextricably tied to social justice. You know, many people have already made this point that, and it's a health issue, and I think that the people who predominantly benefit from the industry carry some of the biggest responsibility to change it. And if you come from a platform, myself as an able-bodied, white, heterosexual woman, have an opportunity to leverage that privilege to change the landscape. It's not just the responsibility of other people who are marginalized. In fact, it's the responsibility of the people who have the privilege to be an active part of that conversation and be an active support and ally of that conversation and those movements. So that's why I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you. So let's go to the moment, like the moment when you decided that this was a business that you had to do. What was happening for you in that moment? What did you experience in that moment? What gave you some assurance that this was something that you and you alone could do to help spark this evolution?
I'll just jump in right here. I think for me, I was sick and tired. I was sick and tired of being the only person. I was sick and tired of being a token. And is anybody here from Boston? Okay. So you ladies know. So Boston, the city where our business is, the city where Wallace and I live, has such a historic presence of racism, marginalized communities, redlining, that permeates every being of the society in Boston. And so myself, as someone who was attending, very elite gyms, being the only person being looked down on, seeing the only people of colors, being the people physically cleaning the floors, and when you walk in and getting those questions like, oh, you're here for a class? That was a regular part of my existence. And one day I just looked around and I said, you know what, there has to be another way. And at this time I had no fitness background other than enjoying to go to classes, and I come from a very big soccer and tennis family. I had no background. So I just went off with like the faith that, okay, we're gonna do one event, we'll do a pop-up. We're gonna use the soundtrack of hip hop to be the great democratizer of this experience that we want to facilitate. We're gonna bring everyone together in Jamaica Plain in Boston. 3 days before the event, it sold out. And we were actually over capacity. We didn't have signature classes. We didn't have the best branding. We didn't really know what we were gonna do. We just knew that this was a space that we wanted to create, and we knew that there was a need for it. Fast forward today where we have our first brick and mortar, and we're getting 900 people come in monthly. It's huge for us, but it literally started with that moment of me just saying, looking around and just being tired of being the only one. So I was like, I know that there's other people that want to get healthy and other people that want to feel good, and it's really sad that they're not here to experience this now. And I feel sad for myself, that I don't belong in this space. So I'm going to create one, and then we did it.
Love it. How about Lake or?
I mean, similarly, I think it was just a sense of it doesn't exist and it needs to, and somebody's got to do it. And I have so many friends, and in the transgender community, by the way, my pronouns are he/him, that are afraid to go to the gym, literally because there's no way to use the restroom or the locker room or the shower. Like on a basic facilities level, there's no access. There's lots of different ways that gym culture is inaccessible to different communities, but for the trans community, sometimes it's just literally a physical limitation in the space. So I saw a vision for creating a space that had a gender-neutral locker room and shower area and sauna, and we've created that successfully. That doesn't exist anywhere. As far as I know, we're the only one in the country. But all it requires is a little privacy for everything, and everyone can actually share a space. It's really doable, but it didn't exist. So in some ways, to Heather's point, when it doesn't exist and you see the need, you just have to create it, knowing that there is a need in your community, and that's what we did.
Sweet. So I want to then talk to you, Tammy, a little bit about what it feels to be a user of these services, what it feels to be considered, and how you have felt on the other side of not being considered in other spaces, and how has that affected your wellness journey?
Yeah, for sure. I think that being considered and being included, and even just those small things like Sam was talking about, it's life-changing. I know for me, I have had I've had definitely a lot of challenges engaging in my own wellness journey because of those accessibility challenges and because of the fact that the awareness isn't there. And so I'm always having to educate people, even when I go into a gym and I say, you know, what is your access like for the transgender community? Most of the time, the response that I get is, we have no idea, we've never even thought about that. And so it's exhausting. You know, Heather alluded to being the token person. It's exhausting to not just be that token person, but to have everybody that you then come into contact with treat you as their personal Wikipedia and expect you to educate them about all of
You
those
don't like that, Tammy?
things. That's exhausting, right? And it's tiring to have to keep making yourself that vulnerable over and over and over again. And for me, every time I come out to somebody, every time I have to share that part of my experience with them, to some degree or not, that is the litmus test of their humanity and of their ability to see me as a fully human being and not just as this one label. And I have found fitness spaces where the accessibility was there sort of grudgingly and reluctantly when I asked for it. I have had other spaces where I just walked away and I didn't even bother having the conversation because I could see what that vibe was going to be like. And I have yet to experience a space like Salmon Lakes that is actively affirming and actively accessible. And I know I am much less engaged in my personal wellness journey than I would like to be because of that. And I know I have seen some statistics that LGBT people are as much as 300% less likely to engage in any wellness services because of those barriers. And it makes me really sad.
Heather, I remember a couple of years ago, our at that time Surgeon General Regina Benjamin, I remember her name because she's got a great name. And I remember her making this statement to Black women, basically saying, look, I know you want to look beautiful, and I know you want to be healthy. If you have to choose health, right? How have you scaled that in your business?
It's been a huge tenet of ours because one of the biggest things that we want to do, and this also alludes to what Tammy and Sam were talking about, is removing barriers of entry, right? Because if our mission is to provide access and to provide equity and to ultimately get marginalized populations, you know, into fitness, it's about removing the barriers to entry. And so for me, and especially as a Black woman, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people where it's like, yeah, I want to work out, I want to be there, but what am I going to do with my hair? Or like, I need to wrap it, I need to do this, like what am I going to do? And I'm definitely one of those people who had the same thing. So when we opened Trill.fit, we said, okay, we're going to dedicate 900 square feet of our space to a hair salon. And so we wanted to make sure that our physical space was accommodating to our neighborhood, because it was more important that we serve the people we say that we're serving and actually do the work, and to provide those services. So we have a full service hair salon that's there. We have gender neutral bathrooms, and so we're always looking for ways that, if, Subway is a reason why you can't get to the space, okay, what's another way that you can get there? Mm-hmm. I think about it, almost akin to how we talk about like voter suppression on the other side of social justice, but if you cannot find a way to get your service, how can we make it easier? How can we provide a pipeline? Because it's important to us, and if not us, who? And if not now, when? So, I think it's for us to take the responsibility to be able to do everything that we can as business owners to make sure that the populations we say that we're serving are actually receiving the benefit of our services.
Love that. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about, just to give the audience a little bit of context, what makes the services that you are offering different? How have you been intentional? Walk it out for me, walk it out for all of us, so that we can begin to internalize what it means to run an inclusive business.
Well, for our business specifically, we are mission-oriented, which means that we have very specific language that describes what radical inclusivity means to us. And that language is provided to every member in a social contract, and all of our staff gets that training as well. And it lays out what radical inclusivity means to us. It gives language to it, it provides a context for everyone. And then beyond that, it's hiring the people that you're hoping to serve, making sure that there's diversity within your company and that you have the people who can speak from those perspectives. Providing training, one of the things that we do is in-house training, where we're providing fitness training for folks who aren't normally getting that access to that training, folks you might not see at a typical fitness location. It looks like ongoing staff trainings where you're bringing in experts around the issues that you're interested in and having them have ongoing conversations with your staff. It's a continual learning process. Never assume that you have all the answers, right? Always seek out other people, other experts who can speak personally from those experiences. Make sure you have for us, we have sliding scale membership because a big tenet of our business is making sure that it's accessible socioeconomically across the board. So it's a community project that requires those who can afford to pay a certain price, pay that to subsidize the folks who can't pay that. And there's a communal responsibility to lift each other up and find common ground within that social structure.
That's interesting. So and I'm going to come back around to you in a second. This resonated with me because when I learned this about your business, immediately I cast it into a nonprofit framework, right? And as context for the audience, I happen to live in a city where 50% of our residents live well above the median income, which for that area happens to be about $130K a year, and then 50% live well below. And so in my city, the major place for working out is the Y. And in our Y, we have a sliding scale membership fee based on your income. But you do have to provide proof of income, and then your fee is set based on that. So how do you do it differently than the Y, and why is it even more radically inclusive?
We looked, when we were building our business model, we definitely looked at and borrowed a lot from the nonprofit sector. But unlike the Y, we don't require any sort of proof of income. It's an honor-based system, which is really important because if you want to include people, think about someone who isn't getting a steady paycheck, or consider someone who's undocumented and can't provide something that would say, this is where I'm getting my money, or they can't open, some folks can't open business bank accounts, or their bank accounts getting watched because they're getting subsidies. All of these things prevent them from being able to get services. So we take those out of the way and we say, this is an honor system, you pay what you can. And that's why we also ask everyone, we say, look, this is how it works. And one of the most wonderful things that has happened for us is that we've had folks whose financial situation has changed and they've come in and they say, I can pay more now, and I'm really glad that I can, thank you. And then they do. And we have folks who stay at the same membership too. But we rely on every person along that membership spectrum to continue to contribute, and if you can pay more, that you pay more. And I think that putting the onus and the responsibility back into the community and having it be back and forth makes them feel proud of being part of it, and makes them feel like they're part of something bigger, and it becomes like a righteous act,
Righteous act, I
Yeah,
love that.
we talk about giving everyone skin in the game so that when you walk through the doors, you understand that you're becoming a part of a community, not just a gym. You're not just there to put on your headphones and do your thing and then leave. You're there to help create community and services for other folks who maybe can't afford it in the same way, or benefit from the fact that there are other people there who can afford to pay full price memberships. So everyone understands that whether they're paying full price or they're benefiting from our subsidied low-income system, it's a community of people together working as allies and as members of the community who are underserved to create opportunity to wellness. So it really makes people proud to be there, honestly. People are just so excited to be helping in that way. And people are really terrified of that model because they're like, how do you do $25 memberships? it actually works out because, you know, people understand that they're helping other people afford memberships they wouldn't be able to have any other way.
Good, so we're gonna spend some time delving into the financials of how all of this works. Before we get there, I just wanna touch on Tammy for a minute, because there is probably inside of MINDBODY no greater voice that speaks with a sense of clarity about what it really means to be radically diverse, what it means to be richly inclusive. I want to hear from you a little bit about how does it feel to help drive the product and product innovation with these tenants? How does it feel for you, and where can we be different and better?
So I think my experience with MINDBODY, I've been there, like I said, 6.5 years. I've seen us moving in a lot of really positive directions. We have some specific features in our software, such as the ability to customize the list of gender options that appear in our client profiles that are very important to accessibility. The way I described that feature when we announced it was, it is not important to a large segment of our consumers, but to the people that it is important to, it is very, very important. Because that is one of those things that helps them to feel seen, and to help them feel heard, and to help them feel valued. And I am very open and honest about my own life and my own story and my own experiences. And a big part of that for me is that I recognize that I'm in a place where, as a middle-aged, middle-class white woman with a good job and good skills, you know, I can share my experience and I can share my story, and I don't risk that much, relatively speaking. I don't have to worry about losing my job because I'm transgender. I don't have to worry about being evicted from my house because I'm transgender. I don't have to worry about losing my children. A lot of people don't have that freedom, and so with that freedom comes a certain amount of responsibility to stand up and be a voice for those who don't have the privilege to be able to share their experiences yet. And I was privileged at the BOLD conference last year to have an opportunity to meet Michelle Obama and to talk to her very briefly. And I told her just a little bit about my experience and my story, and her words to me were, keep being you and keep telling your story, because we can't afford to go backwards. And I think really the way that social change happens and the way that we move towards justice, the way that, as Dr. King said, that we make the pendulum swing towards justice, is by connecting human being to human being. So I share my story in order to help people see me as a fully realized human being, and not just as that one label, transgender, or that one label, autistic, or whatever it is. I think it's a lot easier to hate an abstract idea than it is to hate that person that you know and have a connection with. And so for me, that is critically important. And you know, I think there's often a tendency for people to say, oh, well, I'm not a minority, I'm not a member of a marginalized community, this isn't really my problem. And I think the reality is that we all have skin in that game, because we all live in society, and that society is populated by all of us, and we all have a responsibility in whatever ways we can to move it towards justice and inclusivity and equality. And you know, those are big challenges, and it takes all of us to solve them. There's a proverb that I really like that says, it is not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to abstain from it. And we all just have to do the part that we can with whatever privilege and marginalization we have to move the needle towards a society where everybody is included equally.
Got it. So at least 3, but maybe 4 of you, I know I might have lost count, have used the words revolution, social justice, equality. Help us unpack that a little bit. What does that really mean to you, to the people that that you're serving, what does it mean to the world inside of this wellness ecosystem that we are trying to build? And also talk about what is the risk of not doing this at all? Specifically from this perspective, not financially. We'll deal with that in a second. Revolution, social justice, these are all big words.
I think at the core of it, when we talk about ourselves being wellness professionals, wellness in general is quite aspirational, right? It's quite luxurious. There is a privilege that comes with that to say, you know, yes, I'm taking this time to invest in myself and do all of these things. And I think for us, as professionals and business owners, to really, like, as we're talking about, like Dr. King says, like, swing the pendulum towards justice, or to create a beloved community, which is what we talk a lot about at trill.fit, there's small steps that we can take. And I think that for us as people, the risk of not doing that, especially today in 2019, is insane. You know, I think that if anyone is able to take up and, you know, just say, like, yes, I stand for this. I want people, just waking up in the morning and saying, I want when people walk into my business for them to feel included and for them to feel safe and for them to know that they have a place here is a revolutionary first step. Just being self-aware enough to say, you know, I don't want people to be afraid to come here. I want them to be able to have a wonderful wellness and health journey in this physical space. That's the first step, and then I think from there is how you build the blueprint of how you do those things. I think that we're all aware of what's happening in the world right now. Cancel culture is rampant, right?
What is cancel culture? Talk about it.
So cancel culture, right? Someone does something that you don't like for X reason, they're canceled. Bye, we don't care about you anymore, you're canceled. We've seen that happen in a variety of different ways. You know, business boycotts are super commonplace right now because more than ever, customers want to shop from brands that believe in something and that stand for something. So recently in the news, you know, a lot of people are seeing folks cancel their Equinox memberships based on what's happening in SoulCycle, and there's a message to say, if you stand for equality and you stand for this, you cannot go to that place and you are canceled because of it. And that's a radical example to share with the group right now, but it's in our industry. And I think more and more consumers are smart, they're waking up and they're saying, I want to put my dollars into businesses that are specifically helping my community, this community, marginalized communities. And if you don't do that, and moreover, if you create a divisive line and you are excluding people, I do not want to shop with you. So from a practical business perspective, if you are not thinking about inclusivity and diversity, it will affect your business. You know, for me, and I think I speak for all of us, when it is a passion, it is an integrity point, but from a financial and a business perspective, it will affect your bottom line. And so now I think is the time to think about if you don't have a POV on it, I think this is the conversation to help you facilitate that and for you to decide for yourself where at the scale would you like to be.
Thank you. Like,
yeah, I mean, obviously, revolution and social justice and these words can feel like a lot for some people. They can feel really intimidating and kind of like, well, where do I put myself? Especially if it's not something that you have to talk about every day at your dinner table. If you're from the point of privilege that it's not an aspect of your daily life, there's this notion that it's not your problem. And I think that the entree into that is to understand that revolution happens on many levels and can start on the smallest level with how you talk to your friends, how you converse with your children, what businesses you go to, you know, who you choose to smile at if you don't choose to smile at people, noticing the way that you interact with people in the world, having more self-awareness. I mean, I think that's the initial step, you know, if you're coming from a perspective of privilege, is having an awareness of what you're taking for granted and the conversations that you are not required to have because of your privilege. And then you take that out to the commercial space and look at what it is that you're buying and what it is that you're using. And please rid yourself of the complete misconception that just because you're in a space that only shares people who look just like you, that you are not bringing in all of those levels of privilege, race, class, that's very much deeply, inherently part of the situation and the experience you're having. So, you know, I think part of the first step is understanding that every person has a role in it, and that there are really like small, easy ways that you can start looking into that and being curious about it. I mean, I think that's a huge aspect, especially as a business owner. You have to come at these issues with a curiosity and an openness and willingness to learn. That is the path forward. You know, this cancel culture is really interesting, and a lot of conversations that we have at our gym is what radical inclusivity really means, and that means that we're called everybody. We are for
By the way, I love
everybody. Yes,
I
thank
love
you.
it.
That means that every person who walks through our door gets an opportunity to be a part of the project. We don't turn anyone away based on how they look, or the only reason why someone might decide they don't want to be there is if they're not interested in being part of a radically inclusive community. Everybody has to have, you know, stake in order for it to work.
So earlier today, I talked about safe spaces. And this community upgraded me a little bit, right? Upgraded me to a space called a brave space. What does that mean to you, and what does it mean to all of the business owners who are out here thinking about how to shift and evolve their businesses to be even more inclusive? What does a brave space mean?
So a brave space is something that we talk about in juxtaposition with a safe space. So a safe space is where any person can go in, feel safe, feel heard, and understand that that's a space where there is not likely to be danger from like verbal, physical, anything like that, right? A brave space, however, is a space where often you can find diverse opinions, diversity of thought, conflicting, and it's a space that has, you know, a general agreement between the participants of respect and equity, and that we can hear each other's viewpoints. They may be diametrically opposed, but we can talk about it and we can work through it to a path forward. And I think, you know, in our business specifically, it's something that we're really, really advocating for, because the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to change hearts and minds and really move forward to a more equitable and just future is if you're able to have those brave conversations. If you're in a room and everyone feels the same way and you're all reflective of one ideology, one thought, like, you know, you're not having that diversity of thought that's really pushing you forward. And that's not to say that safe spaces aren't important, because they are still vitally important. And you need to have places where communities can come together and caucus and really, you know, live that shared experience together. But brave spaces are, you know, that next step forward where it's like we're welcoming in outside voices with the intention of moving forward together, and that's where the real work is done.
So, like, what if this is just simplistic for me, right? Like, I really just want to get 45 minutes of sweat equity in, I want to work out a little bit, I don't really want to have a whole bunch of conversations, I don't want to deal with your issues, I don't want you to deal with mine. Why is it that this is essential, and under what circumstances does it even come up? And I want you both, one of you, to talk about how you have crafted your environment to make conversation happen and to remove us from just coming in and trying to be in our own world, doing our own thing with respect to our own fitness journeys, or wellness journeys, or beauty journeys.
Well, I just want to say I really appreciated that Heather had already conceptualized the brave space concept as well. That just speaks to our similar ideology and approach to fitness and wellness, because the problem with safe space, in my opinion, is that, you know, people want to walk in and be taken care of, and they don't assume any responsibility for creating that for others and for themselves. And when you have, again, like skin in the game, when you're invested in creating the space and making it safe for everyone, and you understand whether you're marginalized or you are not, you're an ally to the project in one or many ways, that it's on you to become part of it and to uphold the values and standards of the space. it changes what you're talking about, coming into a space and just getting your workout done. That's no longer what it's just about. It's about coming into a space, looking around you, seeing a diversity of body types, of races, of genders, of ages, of abilities, and acknowledging that everyone's valid and that everyone's human, and that the project of wellness and fitness isn't about heart rate alone. That it's about more than that, that it's about being in community, which I think is essential to health and wellness. That's my personal view, is that fitness needs to be more about community and less about individual, one-on-one, the Peloton and these like one-on-one at your home with no social interaction at all, movements, is totally in contrast to what we're about. We think that community is actually key to health.
Community is key to health.
Yeah, I mean, I want to make it clear too that you can come to our gym and work out for 45 minutes and not have to have like an intense social justice conversation. You know, that's it, and really, the whole idea is to actually just normalize people in space that occupy different bodies. It's not, and that's probably what's revolutionary about it. It's not about, going in and having these like really brow-furrowing conversations and then being like, oh God, I don't even have time to work out. No, it's, you go there to work out. And it could be that the communal connection you make is that you see someone and you say hi to them, and you might not have ever said hi to this person before. Or you bump into them in the locker room and you create friendships, whatever it is. I mean, gyms have been associated with a certain type of community, especially for women. The thing is like, okay, I put on my headphones, I go, I'm quiet, I don't want to get hit on. So I'm gonna just do my workout, head down, and try to get up there as soon as possible. So that's an isolating gym. That's one aspect of a typical isolating gym culture. We're trying to say, lift your head up, no matter who you are, however you come, and look at people, and maybe that's all you need, and then you're taking classes with people who are different. So, I want to make it clear to you that, like, that's how it gets physicalized.
I'd love to add on to that as well, because especially when you're talking about, saving the world and creating like an equitable environment for everyone, it can sound really daunting, but sometimes it's literally the smallest things. And so like we as business owners, like we can overthink it, and this isn't the business model, and it's this, and this is how we're building our culture code and all of that stuff. But the real radical inclusivity is when you walk into a fitness space and like just like Lake said, when you meet someone and you say hi to them that you never would have seen on the street before, or someone is actually caring about how you're doing. In our studio, everyone is high-fiving after class, people know about each other's lives, and so they might not be getting deep on like, oh, like what racial microaggression happened to you today, or like, what are you gonna boycott this weekend? Let me know, sis, so I can do it too. It's not necessarily those conversations, but just having a place where people can come together and kind of just say like, we're all in this together, and have that as the sensibility that everyone is feeling, whether you are, a person of the community, an ally, or whichever place on the spectrum you fall, that you are able to have those conversations, that you're coming in contact with different people. That's the truly radical piece of it. So I think we've all been that one person in a class, in a gym, in an experience.
Got it. So I want to do one more question, and then I want to open it up to questions. And this is about the dollars and cents, right? At the end of the day, these are business owners, many of them, who have sacrificed much of their livelihood to make a dream possible, and are really hoping that that sacrifice manifests itself in some hopefully profitable way, right? Is this a profitable notion here? Does it make sense? Like, why can't I just focus on the ultra wealthy, right, who are totally bought into a singular narrative, who are willing to pay for it, and run with it? Like, that's easy. This is hard. Does it even make financial sense? Am I making it harder than it is? Talk about it.
I mean, I'll definitely say, as a business owner, we're always worried about the bottom line, and I will say, yes, there is profit in it. Yes, it's important. you know, if you look at your gym and or your business or your salon or your spa and you see only one type of person coming, know that that means that there's, you know, 10, 15, 20, 35, 100 different target consumers that exist in the ecosystem that you're currently not speaking to. So any initiative that you take that's going to build incremental revenue, that's more money in your pocket at the end of the day. Like forget about, you know, being a great person and everything, you know, you believe in and the integrity aspect of it. When you find additional communities to add into your business, that's incremental revenue because you're growing your physical base. Now, for businesses that are building with intention and like with missions at the heart of it, trill.fit's a corporation, and we specifically have people like not just the consumers who come into our gym, but also brands who sponsor us, people who buy out the studio, content programs, influencers, digital content, who specifically choose us and use their dollars to vote for us because of what we stand for. And so I would say to take that as an example. We've been in business with our brick and mortar for 6 months. We've just crossed $100,000 in revenue, which is, you know, significant. This is for a first-time entrepreneur. We've never opened a space. Everything we did was self-funded. So there is money in it. There's, you know, we can talk about the branding and marketing and the attractiveness of having an inclusive brand, because more and more, if you are looking at a space where, you know, you want to be teaming up with companies and brands and multi-million-dollar like global entities, they are specifically looking for businesses that align with their interests, and diversity, inclusion, and equity is at the top of everyone's list. Again, as we look at cancel culture and boycotts, like all of those billion-dollar corporations don't want to be on that list, and they are increasingly looking at, you know, authentic, relevant voices who make sense, like within the digital landscape, to support. So you're looking at two different types of streams of revenue. That's the people and the community that you're supporting and you're standing for by offering them this space that they're coming into, and then also the B2B aspect of it, where there's a lot of brands who want to sponsor diverse and inclusive studios, and we're definitely one of them, and we've received a lot of benefits from that. So short answer, yes. There's money in it, and also you're being a good person, which is priceless.
Priceless. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. We came here for a reason. Who's dying to ask a question? There, and then here.
I have two questions. Ron Hudson, Santa Cruz, Regina. What's your background, educational background in training trans people? The two of you. What was the question? What's your educational background on training trans specific people?
You mean training them for work or training trainers?
No, training in the gym with clients.
I think you're asking what our educational approach is to train like physical training with trans people in the gym. And we have trainers that identify across the spectrum in terms of gender, and you know, we really prioritize hiring people who do have those different identifications to give people options to work with, so that people who are of trans experience can choose a person who's experienced something similar, or, you know, has firsthand knowledge about, you know, post-op, you know, workout issues and things of that nature. We don't really have like a training program in place for trans trainers, but I definitely hire people who are trans identified to make sure there's a range of experience in the gym for people to work with.
So we also do biannual staff trainings where we'll bring in all of our staff and we'll have folks, different experts from different communities come and do trainings with them around language, around access. So we try to make sure that our staff who also don't identify or identify differently are also getting information in language to be able to service all of our community as well. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. There's a question here.
What advice do you guys have before you guys were new businesses and you found a need in your community? But what if you're an existing business and you don't necessarily know that there's a need, or maybe it's not voiced, or you have struggles within the community, like they only see the more exclusive than inclusive? How do you encourage the inclusivity in your community?
I'll I'll jump in on this one. I would say talk to the community. And if you're talking about like physical, like a geographical location, when we opened up in our space, which is a predominantly Puerto Rican and Black neighborhood, before we even started like doing our construction or anything, we walked the block every day and we talked to every single person that we could. We met with every business owner on the street, every nonprofit, every city rep. We said, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we're trying to do, and we want to be here for the community. This is our intention, and we would like your support. What we also do is we hold quarterly community meetings where we have the nonprofits, a couple state reps attend, and they physically come to our space and they tell us basically, all right, y'all are doing it, or no, you guys still have work to do, and they hold us accountable. So I would say in terms of, bridging the gap with your community, I would talk to them first and find out what their experience is, and then start to continue to have conversations with other people to figure out what are the steps that you need to specifically take for your business, and let them hold you accountable to it. Because if you're asking yourself the question, that means something is bubbling up for you that you sense it, which means other people are probably sensing it too.
Thank you. Question back here, and then I'll come around here.
I really like the last question you asked. You were like,
All about the dollars and cents.
Yeah, it's all about the sense, and I like the Howard Schultz kind of, it's a performance-driven company through humanity, the lens of humanity. That's kind of how I do my business. But my question is like, I try to like understand diversity, lead in by Sheryl Sandberg, and diversity. Like I'm trying, but it's like, and he kind of asked a question kind of along the same lines. Is like, how do I facilitate training for my staff? Like, is there a good book I recommend? Do I sit down? Like, I'm not really sure what step. Like when you say training, it's like, okay, you're training. It's like, who's facilitating this? What are the messages that we need to get? Make sure that they're getting a different perspective.
Yeah. You find there are so many incredible experts, professionals. You find the people who can speak from that perspective. You don't try to speak from that perspective, right? You find, you hire the people that you want to see, the diversity that you want to see. And if it exists, I mean, the thing is that exists, and you have to figure out, you have to work with the people who help you find the right people. And you have to educate yourself. I mean, I think the first thing you should do personally is absorb all the possible information you can, but never assume that you're the expert on it, right? So we always intentionally work with consultants. If it's something that we can't speak to, we find the professional who can. And that's an investment that is worth it. You find the people within the community, you do the research.
I also would just recommend, we have an advisory committee that's a diverse body in many ways, and particularly as white business owners, we can't speak to people of color's experiences, so it's really important for us as a blind spot to have that perspective echoed and shared with us so that we can understand what we need to do to make sure that we're being accessible to people of color. And that means, creating a different structure where maybe you have an advisory committee that you can turn to when you have questions or you want to run something by, who can give you their honest feedback and who you trust.
Because it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know, and it's a long journey, it's a lifelong thing. So first, thank you for showing up today, because it's great to have you here. And just know that there's so many resources, so whatever you don't know, find someone who does know and chat with them, and chat with the people in your business, and you will start to formulate a plan.
Yeah, start setting aside a budget that you put towards finding experts and paying them what they deserve, and finding all those people and doing the research. It's exciting.
Super exciting. Question here.
Yeah, so my name is Jillian. Thank you guys so much for this. This is really important. Sort of a follow-up question. I'm a very privileged white lesbian gym owner in Denver, and our message to our clients has always been like, we want you to walk in the door, not only feel accepted, but like celebrated for who you are. So you guys said something that really like struck my heart at the beginning about feeling tokenized. And I just want to ask you guys specifically, is there a way that would feel really good to you? Like if you guys are already my clients, I can come up to you and say, hey, we really value you, I value your opinion. Are there any gaps? Are there any blind spots that we're not doing as a business to like make you feel more comfortable to, in any way, to help me expand my awareness versus making you feel badly that I'm coming to you? Is there a difference there that you can highlight for me?
Yeah, I think it's the nuance of how you frame the question, because I think, like, if I put on my consumer hat as someone, you know, going into a gym, if a business owner was like, hey, I noticed you're the only person of color here, like what drew you? Like, I would love for someone to ask me that, and then for us to have a great conversation about it. I think it's different when you push the work onto the person. So if the conversation instead was, Heather, I noticed that you're the only Black person here, so I would love it if you could tap into your neighborhood and get 20 more. So, you know, like that's it's funny, but like that's the nuance of it, right? And I think in my experience before we started TrillFit, no one had ever said anything to me about the very obvious fact that I was the only Black woman in these expensive gyms and spas. No one said it, no, except for service staff. No one said anything. I knew it was true. They knew it was true. It was the elephant in the room. And so I give super, super respect for anyone to bring that up, because I would have loved to have that conversation as a consumer. And being upfront and open with your intention of building this space, I think is wonderful. And I think, again, like to our last point, having those conversations and just saying, like, listen, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable right now as a business owner, but, you know, I notice X, Y, and Z. Is there anything that you think that I can do from a business owner perspective to create a more inclusive environment? Because, you know, how did you hear about us? You know, I think is wonderful.
So we have time for just one more question. I thought I saw one. Is it here? All right. And then.
I'm Kate, and I'm actually a MINDBODY employee. My pronouns are she, her. I was part of the teams that built our company's ED&I, Equality, Diversity, Inclusivity task forces, and Women in Tech. And throughout the year, you know, we try to put on a lot of great opportunities and events and really good things to help our community become more aware and educated and feel more included. One topic that comes up a lot is allyship, and how can you know, employees be allies to each other? How can executives be, you know, allies to their employees? And I just didn't know if, for any of you, if you had some really great examples of allyship and what that might look like for those who just really don't know what allyship really means. If you had any examples.
Great question. I don't want to talk too much. I have a really good example for this, and I will be brief. Whenever people ask like about how we started TrillFit, and if anyone wants to hear more about this later, I'll tell you. I always jokingly say like every Black thing that could have happened to me happened to me. Everything, right? Through all of it, one of my landlords, he is, you know, a typical developer, young, white, male, millionaire, you know, all of that stuff. And he has been one of the biggest allies as TrillFit has grown, and he's done it in a lot of different ways. One, being a sounding board and a person that I can just talk to and listen, and someone who can help, you know, sort of give me information on the white spaces that I have. So for example, when we were reading architectural plans, when we were planning our build out, a lot of stuff that I thought I knew that I had no idea, he took the time and probably set aside, you know, a couple hours a week to make sure that I understood everything that I was signing, everything like that, because he knew I didn't know, and he knew that I didn't necessarily have a lot of resources and other people who would have taken the time, and he didn't want to be the type of developer that was just taking my money and signing me up for a long commercial lease and like bankrupting me, knowing everything that I was trying to do for the community I'm standing for. So taking the time to listen, help, be aware, and also sharing the conversations that happen when you are not around is a huge, amazing thing that this specific person does for us. The other side of like when you really have a mission, especially if you are in like a city that is experiencing a lot of racism, and then this is like a part of the current discourse, you're gonna piss a lot of people off for sure. And to have someone whose version of allyship is letting us be aware of the conversations that are happening when we're not in the room, so that we can best prepare ourselves, and also so that we know is huge. So allyship is a scale. It can be having a conversation with someone. It can be doing the work to help them, you know, and teach them and like do something like that. It can be connecting the dots. It can be, oh, I know that you don't have this resource. I'm going to connect you to this other person who can do that. It can just be, you know, here's an experience that I had once that might help you. So allyship looks different for everybody, but it is so vitally important whether you have 5 minutes or you have 5 hours to lend someone who really needs it.
Any wrap-up comments that you have to say before we thank you for being amazing?
I guess I just say I'm super excited. I hope that everyone here feels inspired and feels like there's something that you can do, like, you know, just some version of allyship that I'm particularly interested in right now too, is when I'm in a space where I'm clearly around people who are just like me, having conversations, being an ally, having conversations and advocating for people who aren't in the room on whatever small scale, because we're always in social situations that are racially charged, that are sexually oriented charged, whatever it is, whatever the dominant, whatever the individuals are that are in that room, they're occupying a social space, and that has significant meaning, and we can have conversations at any level. So I think having allyship conversations within people who all share the same identities is especially important as well. So I hope people are excited by the kind of research that you can do now that will ultimately strongly benefit your business as well.
Awesome.
And I just want to add, we've talked a lot about allies. I just want to say being an ally is a verb, it's not a noun, and it's not an adjective. Being an ally is about actively participating in the conversation, and the way that I look at it, I say a lot of times when I'm speaking that the marginalized communities, because they're marginalized, because of those structural power imbalances in our society, we don't have the power to change those things on our own. We need your help.
And I guess I would just say everyone has a stake in this. I mean, even if you don't feel like it affects you, we all benefit when everyone is served. Equality is good for all of us, it's healthy for all of us. And ultimately, it's my hope that, you know, health and fitness evolves to that point where that's really understood and fundamental.
Thank you. Let's give it up for these panelists.